Thank you for joining us, to our eChurch family, MFM family, and our friends around the world. We love you. God bless you.
Now you know this is the day that the Lord has made, and we're going to rejoice and be glad in it. And I know, Pastor, they are already glad because they are tuning into this service. God bless you.
Bless you. Nehemiah, the 4th chapter, and I'm going to read verse 14 through 16. I'll pick it up in verse 14. When you have it, say, I have it. Let's look at it from the New King James Version. And I looked and arose and said to the nobles, to the leaders and the rest of the people, do not be afraid of them. Remember the Lord, great and awesome, are terrible in the King James, and fight for your brother, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your houses. And it happened when our enemies heard it, it was known to us that God had brought their plot to nothing, that all of us returned to the wall, everyone to his work. Verse 16, and so it was from that time on that the half of our servants worked at constructions, while the other half held the spear and the shield and the bow and the war armor, and the leaders were behind all the house of Judah. Come back strong. Say that again. Come back strong. Come back. Come back is a return. It is a resurging, a recovery. It is an upturn. It also is a revival. It is the place also that a person can come back quick when something is said to them critical. They can respond quickly. My daughter's like that. She always have a quick response to anything. I told her she should have been an attorney and not. Anyway, come back, always have a comeback. Strong is the ability to withstand great force of pressure and having the power to move heavy objects. I believe this year in 2021, as we reset, we're also going to have some heavy lifting to do as we come back strong. As I prepared this message, a story of two people interested me, Brittany Hamilton and also a Don Logan. They were very interesting because of the way they came back. Brittany Hamilton was 13 years old when her left arm was bitten off by a shark while surfing. And after medical operations and therapy, she returned to the sport and learning how to surf with one arm. And with her newly designed surfboard, she's back on the water and surfing again. Don Logan was a former school janitor and a straight-A student in her high school in North Carolina. Yet during her senior year in high school, she was homeless after being abandoned by drug-abusing parents. But it did not stop her. It did not limit her. She applied for college at Harvard University and was offered a full scholarship. They did not allow what was opposition against them to stop them or prevent them from moving forward and coming back strong. I believe the setback and the devastation that they were going through with thinking with them that it must have been very devastating and almost hopeless to think that how can you recover after such tragedy. But I believe both of them, to me, was looking at their life and says the life is worth fighting for. Raise your right hand and say, my life is worth fighting for. Despite the devastation and the hopeless condition that they face, they meant within themselves, they told themselves that they were going to fight back. You see, coming back strong, it begins with a change. Because if you don't want what you've always done, you'll get what you always have. If you do what you've always done, Clinton, you'll get what you always have. So you have to change your approach to things. These changes does not come drastically, sometimes just microscopically, making subtle changes. One person said, it's a long hike ahead of you, but if you just put one foot in front of the other, you'll get there as you begin to move forward. In order to have a successful comeback, there's some things that you and I must do. First of all, I must own it. I must realize that this thing is happening for a reason. Either God is teaching me something or I'm going to learn something through this. I must own it. But by owning it, I must also believe to myself that this is not where I'm going to stay the rest of my life. Also, I must feel it. The emotions here is a strong drive that makes me want to come back. As I start feeling it, I make a decision to know that I need a comeback. It's in the heart that rules the heart. The heart rules the mind, and the mind also is governed by the heart, and the head also moves the heart and mind in every situation. In other words, you have to find your reason of why. Why am I coming back? Why am I doing this? Why am I staying in this? Once you find your why, then you begin to understand it's your reason to want to fight for it, the obstacles that may be against you. But when you find your why, you overcome your setbacks. Letting go, there are some things you must have to let go of. Letting go of some things you must understand that I can't fix it, I can't mend it, so I must let it go. Working on that situation and letting things go and realizing when I see that things are bigger than me and I can't change them, I let it go. I can't work this thing forever. I have to move on because I'm on my way to my comeback. You don't have to look for sympathy. You must look for solutions. When you let things go, quit trying to get everybody to come along and baby you and cuddle you and yeah, that part. But I have to let things go. Somebody said, let it go. Say it like Teddy Pendergrass. No, listen, the silence, next it is the silence of the inner critic. Here are some things that I must do. Silence that inner critic. It's important to remember that the negative thoughts may not be based on reality. So silence that inner critics. Number 5, schedule your comeback. Here's why I want you to come on and join in with me on this even more. The friction that begins to happen, the biggest friction or resistance is during the time of comeback, coming back. And coming back is when you just have to get started. Somebody say get started. You have to discover that there's set a routine. I've discovered in getting started on coming back to some things, I discovered to set a routine. If I set a routine and commit myself to it, then the friction is less bearable. The friction is more bearable. It doesn't come up against me as hard because I've made my mind up that though I feel the friction and the resistance, I'm not going to let it stop me from coming back. So let's start this morning, right now. If you have a diary, pull it out. If you have a phone, pull it out. Set a calendar date on your comeback. Today is your day of comeback, 1/24/2021. You're coming back from whatever the enemy's trying to do. This is my date. I'm setting my date on my calendar that I'm coming back. Don't clap, set your date, set your date, set your date, set your date. Make a reoccurrence, this is what I do, appointment on that date throughout the year. So every 3 months, on the 24th of each month, I come back and check on my progress, check on my upgrades, see what I need to do, check out my habits, what am I doing, what's my positive thoughts around my success. Every 3 months, that date pops up, boom, the 24th. Okay, what has happened? We're already started into the year, so around March the 24th, you're going to look back at your calendar and see how much progress have I made. If this is my comeback year, there's no sense in me trying to be in more debt in March the 24th than I'm in right now. Today, January the 24th, 2021, according to Proverbs 22 and 28, I declare or decree a thing, and it will be established for you, and the light shall shine on your way. Somebody say, I decree and I declare today is my comeback. I decree today I will receive blessings and favor on my life. I did something last year and I put it for the next year, which is going into 2021. And every 3 months I have on my calendar, it just pops up as a date of an appointment. And it popped up last Friday. Today, unstoppable favor and blessings are coming in my life. And I looked and said, I have an appointment. Something's going to happen today, but that's the vision of faith. You put it in front of you. You write the vision and make it plain. And so the tickler is in the calendar. So the next 2 months or 3 months, it's going to pop up again. But I believe in between there and now, the blessing is on the way. Are you still with me? I decree today the blessings and favor of God is on my life. I decree and declare that somebody's got their name in their mouth, got my name in their mouth to bless me and prosper me in every way possible. I believe that I am not going to go backwards. I'm going forward. I feel my comeback right now, and it feels mighty good. Coming back is not an easy thing. It's something you have to work on and be intentional with it if you're going to come back. Our text this morning in the book of Nehemiah, if you look at where we were coming to, Nehemiah in this 4th chapter, verse 14 to 16, he said, please understand that Nehemiah's name means Jehovah comforts. And his name means a lot to us because if nothing more, the world, the nation, and the church that we live in and the people that we're around, this nation needs comfort. Nehemiah is a man that came to bring comfort. His writings of his book, Nehemiah, the 1st to the 6th chapter covers the reconstruction of the wall, From the 7th to the 13th chapter, it deals with the reconstruction of the people. We see, if you look at history, that in the Hebrew Bible, that Ezra and Nehemiah are one book. It's just broken up in the new writings of the King James writing. The story coincide with Ezra, Nehemiah, and Esther, all in one writing, speaking of the same story. It appears in the Bible in reverse chronicle. Their names appear in the Bible in the reverse chronicle. In your Bible, it's going to say Ezra, Nehemiah, Esther. But in the Hebrew Bible, it starts with Esther. Esther is the one that God begins to speak to in the midst of Israel's captivity about them coming out of that captivity. Then it goes to Ezra. Ezra here speaks about the reformation or the building of the house of God after Zerubbabel had laid the foundation. And the building of the house of God is the first thing that takes place in a comeback in the life of the believer and in the life of the church. If there's no dwelling place and there's no temple, there's no reason to come and worship. It has to have a place to come and worship, and that place will be in the house of the Lord. So Ezra here now becomes the building of the temple, and Nehemiah speaks to us about building of the wall. The wall here speaks of the protection, of the security, and the safety of God's people. Nehemiah knew he had a hard task, but one that was burdened and laid into his heart about coming back. So it doesn't mean anything if you don't get your walls built back up. The walls here for Nehemiah speaks to us in the same concept of Jerusalem is a symbol of God's dwelling place. So the walls now are being built up. You at home, your walls and your core is being built up. The enemy has did everything he could to tear you down and rip you apart and take prayer out your mind and put fear in your spirit. But God is sending a word this morning to build you back up. Brick by brick upon every wall, you'll become a dwelling place for God. As Nehemiah understood, the wall brought strength and protection. We now understand that God has a dwelling place in us, that we are a city that's set on the hill that cannot be hid. There must be protection around you. It's more than just Jesus build a fence around me. It's God show me how to protect myself from things that will have infrastructure or come into destroy, invade, or impart into my life to tear me down. Protect me on every side. The book of Nehemiah in the 2nd chapter developed strategies on the comeback. They were strong. Notice carefully, if you look at the 2nd chapter of Nehemiah, how he begins to deal with strategies to come back. He understood that he was being watched very closely around verse 11. As he came up to the city, and he's there for 3 days, moving throughout the city, going up in secret and not letting everyone know what his whole plan was. Whenever you get ready to come back, everybody don't need to know what your comeback is all about. But there are some things God will reveal to you as you begin to come back. And there he was after 3 days in verse 11 of the 12th chapter. He rose in the night with a few men with him and told not one what my God had put in my heart. Don't let everybody know what's in your heart. Make sure you protect that thing in secret, because you're coming back from something that the enemy don't want you to recover from. Nehemiah had this thing in his heart about Jerusalem. No one had a beast to ride on but him. I see him in my mind's eye going up through this rubbish and ruins. God had put something in his heart, but things looked so devastating, so burnt up, so completely wiped out and annihilated. But it was in Nehemiah's heart. Still, he held on to what God told him, that he was not going to let it slip from his heart. Is there anybody here that have your life in a wreck right now? But God has already told you that I'm bringing you back to your rightful place. I know the enemy has come with everything he could to tear you down and apart, but God has put something in your heart, and that thing cannot be shaken from you. When something is placed in your heart, heart is an unfulfilled desire. It is hope deferred that makes the heart sick. But when it comes, it yields a tree of life. A tree of life is a personal development, is one that is requirements of the internal beauty of God. That thing is in my heart for what God showed me. That's why I can't sleep sometime at night thinking about what God promised me that's going to happen in the morning. It keeps me up in prayer. It keeps me awakened, thinking about after all the enemy is done, God has planned my comeback. Unrelenting. The Message Bible says it like this, Proverbs 22, Proverbs 13 and 12. Unrelenting disappointment leaves you heartsick, but sudden good break can turn life around. A relenting disappointment leaves the heart sick, but a sudden good break can turn life around. A sudden good break can turn life around. It may not look like it, but all of a sudden, there you are on the rope-a-dope. I'm sorry, come back. All of a sudden, looks like you've already lost, but just a sudden good break can turn your life around. Nehemiah studied the plans in the 13th verse. He looked at it in secret, and by night, the walls of Jerusalem was broken down. It was very devastated to see. The gates were burnt with fire. Remember, you cannot trust everyone with your plans, your dreams, nor your visions. Only when you understand who's on your side can you reveal the plans to them. People always saying, I'm with you, as they see you going up. But right now, you're in a tough place and got to wait for God to bring you back. It is in Nehemiah, the 2nd chapter, and verse 17. Then I said unto them, you see the trouble and the distress that we are in. Let me help you that don't understand the message. We are all in trouble. We all are going through something. Everybody is looking for a way out. I don't care who it is, rich or poor. We're all going through something. Do you see the distress that we are in? Jerusalem lie in ruins, and the gates have been burnt with fire. Come, let us rebuild the wall, he's saying to them, of Jerusalem, and we will no longer be a disgrace. We all are in this thing together, so let's build this thing back up together. Notice his approach of Nehemiah, the approach of Nehemiah. He begins to observe the problem. Then he provides a solution, and then he moves on to explain the resources that he has at his disposal. He did not stay at the problem. I've heard enough problems. I've heard enough what is not going to happen. I heard about enough of how bad it is and how short things are. That's the problem. And he moved on to the solution. And that solution was that God has released him to do a comeback. By the words of the king, he was getting to have a comeback to rebuild this wall. And he looked at the resources. God always leaves a believer with something. You have something to come back with. If it's just a little meal and a little oil, you're going to have enough to come back with. And one thing I know for sure, if you ever leave a believer with just one more praise, they're coming back strong. I don't, not money, just leave me with one more praise. I'm going to come back strong. That's why the devil then shut some of y'all up, but some of y'all hollering right through your mask. I'll bless the Lord at all times. And my family will be blessed. My life will be blessed. My body will be blessed. I will not become a victim of this virus. I will be blessed in the name of Jesus. So here he is now in the 3rd chapter. As we move quickly in the 3rd chapter, we would get his impression that seemed like there was no opposition against Nehemiah. You know some of the story if you went to Sunday school, but on the contrary, there was great opposition. So Nehemiah had to develop a team and a plan because he understood I can't do this by myself. The most powerful place in transition is knowing who you have on your team. Thank you, Dr. Mercer. The most powerful place in transition is to know who you have on your team. Transition in the process of the period of change, I need to know somebody going to push me and not let me give up. Who's on your team? Who's on your side? What team are you on in the midst of transition? There's the song, Life is Filled with Swift Transition. oppositions. You don't know what's coming, know what's going, but it's good to be on a winning team. Wave at somebody since I'm talking too long and say, I'm on a good team right now. I've been on the losing team, but now y'all ain't waving on nobody. You can wave. I didn't say touch them, just wave at them. Tell them I'm on a winning team now. I'm on a team that sure enough got a comeback. That's got comeback on their mind. The oppositions are an on-time assignment of the enemy. That's good for you to know that. If you feel yourself in the midst of opposition right now, know that it is an on-time assignment of the enemy. I want to oppose you. Why? Because you're getting too close to your comeback. It's too close for you, for me just to sit here and let you get to where you're going. If you feel the heat being turned up, just reach out, because your victory is right in front of you. The enemy doesn't want you to get there, because he knows if you get there the way you praising God now, when you get to what God promised, you're going to have a stupid, crazy praise because of your comeback. Listen. Satan, he never bothers half-hearted people. No, I've never checked the record on him. He never bothers half-hearted people who are content with having a non-committed spiritual existence. He don't bother people that's hot nor cold. He bother people that are lukewarm. Revelations 3:16. Satan is not trying to bother anyone that doesn't make a commitment to your life, but as soon as you make up in your mind, this week I'm gonna live a little holier, then watch the devil bring everything in hell he can bring to stop you from trying to do what you said in your heart you were going to do. It is Jesus Christ believers that know that when you catch on fire for Jesus and begin to move your life into the place that I'm excited about the Lord and I want to do something great for him, is those who catch on fire for Jesus that the devil can't really bother. The discouraging news have come, but my heart is set on doing something great for God. He chose me to come back. I thought the fight was over. I thought the last rumor would wipe me out completely, because I want to pick your raggedy self up that everybody done talked about. Everybody knows your business. Everybody know how low you're gone and what you've done. I want to stand you right. Wait a minute. I want to prepare a table in the presence of your enemy. I want every enemy to come on and sit down, put some chicken in their mouth and watch me tell the devil, I told you she was on her way to a miracle blessing. It is Satan, the adversary, that comes up against the church of God. This adversary is always going about seeking whom he may devour, especially when you're on fire for God, when you have your heart turned to God. The devil wants his best to shut you down. He'll bring up some of the old folk you used to sin with and tell them about your business, but tell them the things yeah, you got it. Come on, church people. I'm not there anymore. My heart is set on God. It is in Nehemiah. Cut across, Clinton, cut across. Come on. Nehemiah, the 4th and the 6th chapter. We see him as he moves to us and shows us the problems that come to him. And he overcame those problems, progressing to rebuild the wall. The various type of oppositions that he was up against. It was a cycle of advancement and setback. Advance and setback. The first one was First one was the arguments. They argued against them. They did not like Nehemiah. Nehemiah, the 4th chapter, verse 1-7, they began to argue against them. They were angry with them. The anger here begins to become infused. It's a burning, mad anger. Why? Because he thought within himself, Sanballat and those, that they were going to take over the territory and cut off their trades because they were advancing in something. The devil always gets angry and mad and furious when God begins to put money back in your pocket and pay down your bills and you get freed up. I wonder what you will do if all your bills were paid, everything paid off, car paid off, everything free, money in the bank, all credit cards free and clear. When you praising God now with all the debt that you're in, what will you do when God lifts all that? Come on, can I find my church? When God lifts all that debt up off you, well, guess what? I got a word from you. You about to come back out of debt, unbroke. You're about to come back to the fullness of what God wants on your life. Wave at somebody, say, I won't be broke at the end of this year. Prophesy to somebody. I won't be broke at the end of this year. He talks about those that were mocking and scheming against them. They didn't like Nehemiah. They didn't like this whole plan. They began to scheme and mock them. They began to threaten them with intimidation. The enemy moves from one thing to the next. When he can't get you with one thing, he moves to the next thing. He's angry with them, but the king had gave word to Nehemiah, You can go on down there and do the work because I'm going to support you to get it done. Then there comes discouragement and the exhaustion. When you know you're being discouraged by the enemy, exhaustion is real because you're trying to come back, trying to get back to where you were before, where my praise was automatic. I didn't have to wait for a whole worship service. I entered the church and said, I'm just, thank God I made it back to Zion, that back to the place where I came in with a mindset that the devils and demons didn't want me to come back into the house of the Lord. Then you begin to holler with the rest of the believers and say, I was glad when they said unto me, let's go back into the house of the Lord. Exhaustion is real. Wears you down, you're tired, but don't throw in the towel. Then come the negativity that comes up, the negativism that comes up. They begin to get negative with Nehemiah. Criticism began to come up. The enemy began to talk. I found out as I walked with God, the more I walk with him, the more I found people get angry. You don't want me saved, you don't want me not saved. What do you want? You don't want me in the church, you don't want me out of the church. What do you want? But if my life now is causing some friction, it's not going to be my problem, it's going to be your problem. For as for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord all the days of my life. If you don't like me now, wait until I get my real victory. If you don't like my praise now, wait till I come out of a car accident. You don't like me shouting now, wait till God step in and turn a miracle in my life. You don't like me now, you're sure enough not going to like me later. Stop that Pentecostal stuff out there. You're not going to like me later. It is here in the comeback. Negativism comes up. The Jews begin to fight against them. The Jewish neighbors in Nehemiah 4 and 12, they were living by the wall. They were not a part of the work, but they heard the report every day 10 times. Isn't it something? Don't want to work with you, don't want to support you. Nehemiah 4 and 12, but they were just living by the wall. The enemies were there on the wall saying, what are these feeble Jews going to do? But the enemies that didn't want to have the message brought to them themselves send back those Jews who lived by the wall. Wasn't a part of the problem, wasn't a part of the solution, but was a part of the problem. They were there with and infected with the spirit of negativism, living around negative people. You can't tell me you're going to get around negative folk and not be negative. You're going to come back with the same negative report. They needed a vaccine of faith. They needed a vaccine of courage. They needed a vaccine of power. But they lived around negative people, so they became negative. Come on, Clinton, get to it. But here come the last one, fear. Fear is the thing that paralyzed them and brought all these things together. Anger and mocking brought about fear, but Jehovah has comfort. God has been a shift in Nehemiah. He said, I can't do it that way, so I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to do something different. Every now and then along your life as a believer, when you get ready for a real comeback, God will shift you into another gear. You ain't had no breakthrough, girl, but when God begins to move in your life, you will holler like Bartimaeus. You will scream to Jesus, stand still. When God begins to move in your life, somehow a shift. They shifted their position, went into prayer, visually watched the enemy, got back to hard work, faced the enemy head on, didn't take their eyes off of God. Enemy began to fight against him. Nehemiah begins to pray. His prayer was, Lord, in 4 and 4 of Nehemiah, turn this thing around. I got to close. Stay with me, church. Wave at me and say, Lord, turn this thing around. I feel in my spirit and down in my soul, God's about to turn something around. While the enemy's at the door, I'm going to turn him back to go another way. They prayed and said, Lord, turn the captivity back on them. Look at your enemy. Look at what's fighting you, and God's about to turn it. What's trying to apprehend you, God's going to apprehend it. It can't touch God anointed and do God's prophet no harm. Nehemiah 4 and 6, Nehemiah said, come on, let's build this wall. So built we the wall to the half thereof, because the people had a mind to work. Look at somebody, say, neighbor, if you ain't doing nothing, don't do it around me. Y'all ain't talking to nobody. Say, neighbor, if you ain't doing nothing, don't do it around me. If you ain't praising, if you're not thankful, if you don't have a heart for God, get away from me. I want somebody that's got a mind for God. Come on. Wave at your neighbor, say, come on. Get your mind right. Get your spirit right. Get your heart right. Let's build. Build till God come. Build till we see a change. Nehemiah 4:20. Now y'all listen. Keep that trumpet by me. When I blow the trumpet, we rally together. This morning, church, mountaintop, I'm blowing the trumpet. I'm blowing the trumpet and blowing the trumpet. We're gathering together. Even in social distance, we're still gathering together. God's bringing us back stronger, wiser, more powerful. Come on back. It's your time. It's your place. It's your year for revival, for victory, to overcome, to triumph. If you had a setback, don't go back, because God has planned your comeback. Come on back strong. Come on back strong. Come on back strong. Come on, rest on your feet. Hold your arms out like this. Look at somebody and bounce it. I'm coming back strong, I promise you. I know it wasn't a bad divorce. I know I lost my house, my car, and everything, but I'm coming back stronger. Yes! Hold your hands up. Come on, play with me, church. Father, we bless you now. Thank you for your deliverance of your word. I pray that it found our hearts. You've spoken something to us that we can't shake and we can't let go. Father, I believe according to your word, according to the written of your words, Proverbs 22, I decree this thing this morning, and it shall be established, and the light shall shine upon my path. Give me my peace back. Give me my mind back. Give me my confidence back to know that you're with me and that you've employed me to do. And I shall complete, and there shall be a performance of those things which were spoken. In the name of Jesus. I'm coming back strong.